this session on building the next economy. My name's Lindsay Levin, and I'm the co-founder of TED Countdown, which is TED's global climate initiative. And I'm very excited to be here today with my colleague Julie.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Julie Gonzalez. I lead the industry practice at Ambition Loop.
So I want to just say a little bit about the intention of this session and why we're here. And let me start by just describing TED Countdown. So in 2020, TED decided to launch an initiative on the climate crisis. And we've got 3 goals. We've been working hard at this for the last 6 years with 3 goals. One is to change the story about what's possible and what we're all building. The second is to accelerate solutions. We take important stories, we amplify those and share them with the world with a view to accelerating our progress. And the third is that we deeply believe that we need really bold, radical collaboration, including between people who may think that they don't see eye to eye. So that's what we're doing with Countdown. And over these 2 years, 2026 and 2027, we've really turned our attention to what does it take to build the economy, the new green sustainable economy that we can all kind of see just over the horizon. The thinking is that many of the technologies are here, so much is possible, and in many ways what we need to do is get out of our own way and get on with building. So that's the spirit of this session. Julie, just tell us a little bit about what you're up to in Ambition Loop.
Thank you, Lindsay. So Ambition Loop was co-founded a couple of years ago, working to drive radical collaboration and ambition across nature, climate, and finance. And more recently, we're bringing this track record to industry and the sectors that are the hardest to decarbonize, but also that the world cannot live without. Steel, cement, transportation, energy storage. And our role in that is to better equip both the project developers, but also the capital allocator in analyzing and assessing the need and the requirement of such project to flow finance to the deployment and the scaling to make those solutions available, but also cheaper at scale, empower the next economy.
Wonderful, wonderful, Julie. So it's a real pleasure and honor to be here with you. We've
Likewise.
got 6 fantastic speakers. We're going to have 3 short paired discussions, and then we're going to open up the conversation to the rest of you in the room. So I'd love to invite our first 2 speakers to join me. Lisa Jacobson. Lisa is the president of the Business Council for Sustainable Energy in the US. Please come take a seat. And Nigel Topping, oh, here he is, co-founder of Ambition Loop and chair of the UK Climate Change Committee. So thank you both very much for being here. And we want to start with energy, which of course powers our ability to do everything else. And Lisa, despite my accent, I'm an American citizen as well as a British citizen. I live in the States. And I'm quite conscious when I come back to the UK and to Europe that many people here, I suspect, look at the US and imagine that everything's going backwards given the geopolitics and the political situation. Lisa, give us a sense of what's really going on the ground in the US right now in terms of sustainable energy and our progress.
Well, first of all, Lindsay, wonderful to be here with you, Nigel. It's an honor to be on the stage with you. You know, I'm going to flip things around a little bit. I think the most important energy story in the United States right now is not that we are using less energy, but in fact that we are using more. It's all about more energy now. That's more electrons, more sustainable molecules, and the good news is we have renewable energy, we have energy efficiency, and we have a host of decarbonization technologies that can make sure that our economy lives up to the promise and urgent need to decarbonize. In the United States today, the conversation is about energy expansion. That's for a variety of reasons. It's, of course, it was pretty quick, I'll say it, data centers. It's because of AI data centers. It's because of manufacturing. And it's because of increased electrification in our economy. That's for the oil and gas sector as much as it is for transportation and other buildings and other commercial and industrial processes, in addition to households, of course. So this conversation about energy expansion can be a little scary in a world where we are trying to decarbonize. But when you look at the facts and you look at what's happening in the real economy, I am very optimistic. I'd love to share just 2 or 3 quick stats with you. Obviously, we've had significant policy change at the federal level, and we can talk about that. That's having an impact for sure. But because we are growing so fast, and this is such a significant change from the last 2 decades, it's just like water when you have a flood. The water will go where there's space. And you know where there's space now? It's renewables and storage. They are transforming this next wave of energy transformation. Over 90% of the new capacity additions in the first quarter of this year, this is post significant dramatic policy changes for the sector, have been solar and storage. And when you combine that with energy efficiency, demand response, and energy optimization, we, in the next 5 years, are going to see those being the major drivers and what actually is built and invested in the United States.
Can you give us, Lisa, a couple of examples of where it's progressing fastest?
Well, we have a pretty sophisticated audience here, so I could do a show of hands, but I won't. I think you probably know where this is happening most is in the state of Texas. And I bet, though it's early morning there, if we looked at the power grid in Texas right now, we would see that probably 3/4 of the electricity grid are being served by renewable energy. They are a powerhouse on energy. That is all resources. This is an all of the above state. But you know what's economic? You know what we can do fast? And because they have good regulatory environment, we can do a lot with solar and storage. 11 gigawatts of solar and storage deployed in the state of Texas last year. It's not just that. We could talk about the Midwest, Minnesota. Amazing in the heartland of the United States, such a diversified set of energy deployments, everything from sustainable aviation fuel hubs to bioenergy to renewables to sophisticated demand response programs. Minnesota is a national leader. I could talk about Georgia. I could talk about Wyoming. The list goes on. This is not just a blue state conversation. The drivers for energy right now are in red states.
Wonderful, and I want to come back in a moment to what's slowing us down in some parts of the country. So Nigel, there's a lot happening here in the UK on all sorts of fronts, and there you are chairing the Climate Change Committee. I read from afar of this sort of, we need to slow down, we need to maximize output from the North Sea, we need to slow down on EV targets. Can you unpack that a little bit for us, those of us who want to go out with the right message? What's really going on, and what is the authentic story to be told about progress in the UK and the direction we need to head in?
Okay, so let me break that down a bit. First thing to say is that tomorrow there'll be a debate in Parliament and a vote on the 7th carbon budget, which takes the UK's legally binding targets forward to 2042. The government has recommended, or the government has put forward an 87% target, which follows the advice we gave last year, and that will pass. There will be a lot of hot air and some misinformation. Let me around some of these issues. So let me talk about that. So the North Sea. The North Sea has been a great boon for Great Britain over the last 50 years. We privatised it and let it be extracted at the maximum possible rate that the private sector would want to do it, with a population 10 times that of Norway, and Norway have stewarded it a lot more. So Norway have got more left, and the largesse is spread amongst a much smaller population. The North Sea is a largely geologically depleted basin. We have a mandated body called the North Sea Transition Authority, which has the mandate to maximise economically viable extraction. They estimate that extraction will decline by about another 90% by 2050, and if we really squeeze, by only 85%. So there's a marginal, 5% that you might squeeze out. So there's no big jobs boon, there's no energy security, there's no fiscal boon from drill, baby, drill. There's some, the 500 years kind of nonsense from Trump is just that. No, everyone understands that. What I've been up to Aberdeen, what people really want is certainty. There's a couple of big projects, Jackdaw, an unmanned gas platform, and Rosebank, about 250 direct jobs, about 400 in total, where people need a decision. There's actually a lot more jobs in the decommissioning of wells, which have now come to the end of their life. People need certainty. That's the one thing that really screws up just transitions, the lack of certainty. So it's basically a red herring. There's a couple of decisions that are needed. You can argue that those jobs would be helpful locally, but they won't be big at the macro level. Dogger Bank's about 2,000 jobs, orders of magnitude more jobs in the renewables than in these remaining opportunities. So it's a red herring. In particular, it's not the route to energy security, right? Because it has no benefit on price. The more we extract there, it doesn't make any difference on price because we're price takers because these commodities are priced in international markets. The route to energy security is what we're doing now, which is localizing fast our own sovereign energy resources. Just to put a number on this energy security, it's really important. Two numbers. We recently published a report that said that the total net cost of the transition to net zero for the UK economy, much of which is borne by the private sector, by 2050, be less than the impact of one fossil fuel price spike. We've had 2 fossil fuel price spikes in 4 years. The Office of Budget Responsibility says one price spike a decade to 2050, which is pretty conservative given we've had 2, would cost the UK £400 billion for nothing. You don't build anything for that. That's just rent seeking. So the route to energy security is the path that we're on. EVs is interesting. You always get in any transition some people who want to slow things down, particularly those who've got their strategy wrong. We're electrifying transport quite nicely here. 1 in 4 cars last year. We're up to about 30%. Massive interest, over 30% growth in the last couple of months because people really notice it. The average driver is saving about £1,000 a year. That's a big incentive. Auto Trader, the big car magazine, a couple of months ago said we're now at price parity across all sectors. That's largely because we've got a fiscal incentive, but the gap is coming down fast, and we've estimated for quite a while that within 2 years, for every segment of the automotive fleet, the sticker price for an electric vehicle will be cheaper. So it'll be cheaper to buy, cheaper to run, last longer, cheaper to maintain. So that transition's happening, the cat's out of the bag. Anybody trying to slow it down is sending a signal that you can't rely on the policy framework here. And I was talking to Jenny about that WBCSD report. 85% of businesses saying they want more clarity, strengthened policy signals. So anything that weakens that sends investment elsewhere. People have been investing a lot of money in charging in the UK. You think they'll keep investing if the government starts to dilute it? So we'll see. We're going to have a change of Prime Minister. Maybe we'll have a sort of performative consultation, but I can't see us materially reducing the ambition because it's good for citizens because they save money in the transition, and that's always good for politicians.
So what I hear you say is we've got real momentum, we need to push on, we're making real progress. Paint us a picture, help us imagine the next 5 years. What do you think can be achieved? You might want to speak globally or Europe or the UK, whatever level you want to talk about, but what could we see in practice in the next 5 years, and what is the story we should be sharing with people about that?
I mean, I'd sort of pass it into 3, and it's 2 of them particularly relevant in the UK. There are those technologies like renewables and batteries, so EVs, where we're so far down the cost curve that we can be very, the biggest predictor of where costs go, once you've got a few years of data, is the historical learning rate. So we can be very confident of where these are going. So they're going to continue to grow exponentially. The really interesting thing is what do we do about the next wave of technologies like long duration storage. I know we've got Form Energy here. Some of those things which are going to radically reshape the nature of the grid, right? So instead of thinking about building a grid for peak load, like how many centralized power plants do we need for peak load, we start having lots and lots and lots of distributed generation and storage, including domestically. So I think the thing we really need to focus on now, and actually we'll be talking about that in our annual progress report tomorrow, is electrifying the demand side. We've already decarbonised 82% on the supply side, and we'll finish that job off in the next few years. So we need to pay more attention to the consumer technology stack. Smart meters, time of use tariffs, batteries, EVs, heat pumps, all together can save a lot of money, and then the sources of flexibility at the grid, like different sorts of storage.
Thank you, Nigel. And Lisa, talk a little bit about what is possible in the US in the next 5 years. Similar story, different story. And also, it would be useful if you spoke a little bit about the battles raging. I think this is a global challenge, but particularly strong in the US around we've got to get on and build, and often we get in our own way, including in blue states. So perhaps you could comment on those 2 things.
Well, just to pick up on what Nigel said, I mean, the number one message from the business community is policy certainty. We're having big challenges with that in the United States right now, from an administration that is, revoking permits in many cases at times when projects are, have passed the the final investment decision and in some cases have been under construction or nearly finished. That's not the message for the energy sector right now. That's not the message for the US economy. So the business community at all levels needs that continuity so that we can invest. These are decades-long investment. I think my vision and what I'm hopeful for, and again, I'll point back to Texas, goes to what Nigel just talked about. Like, how can we strategically place batteries, virtual power plants, nodal type resources so that we can manage the load and manage peak and also save customers lots of money while doing so. Texas is doing this. One of our board members, NRG, their smart home business, they've just ramped up in the year. They've oversubscribed and having really strong results in terms of managing load by aggregating households. And it's not just in Texas, but Texas has a unique market because this is one of the bottlenecks. We need to be able to interconnect resources. We need to be able to permit resources, irrespective of changes in permits. We need to have the mindset to move quickly and to expand our energy system. That is not the mindset that the public has or policymakers. The Business Council for Sustainable Energy, the organization that I represent, we have worked on market reform issues at regulatory level. This is utility policies, this is state level policies, to be able to monetize the technologies we have at scale that will enable this cost-effective, strategic deployment of resources. We do not have the market rules or the grid to support this at scale. So that is the challenge. The other challenge I would say is, even if we didn't have policy uncertainty, what the C-suite says in the energy sector is, we need a workforce. We are struggling with workforce. We don't have enough electricians. We do not have the ability to address retirements in the sector, not to mention growth and competition with AI data centers and others that need electricians as well. So we need people. And we need stable supply chains. And again, this, with an expansive mindset, just, adds on to the challenges we were having post-COVID. So we need people, we need goods, and we need the policy to enable us to build.
Final question, Lisa. At a time when so many people are worried about jobs and employment, and here you are talking about the shortage of skills in certain areas and the need to ramp up, how much of this is actually now at this point in the cycle about communication and story and engaging people, as opposed to perhaps previously we didn't have some of the technologies that we've got today, even going back 3 or 5 years?
Educate, educate, educate. That's what my board tells me. I mean, we need to perform in all levels, but if you don't have the public support, you're not going to be able to advance at the local level, and obviously we're not going to attract the workforce. So it's education in all facets. It's forums like this. It's the practical partnerships that we're going to build here at London Climate Action Week. That's my objective for being here. And it's working in local communities, working with community colleges, but not just waiting until the higher education levels. I mean, we need to start, with the, bring your employee or, parents, guardian, whomever to work day. Like at 8 years old, we need to see the electricity sector, the energy sector represented as a vision for, well-paying, career-supporting jobs in the United States. We haven't really had to do that because we, again, for many decades had a very stable workforce, and we also weren't growing as fast. Now it's a whole new conversation.
Lisa, Nigel, thank you so much. Thanks for the work you're doing, and very good luck this week. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I'm delighted to pass back to Julie for our next conversation. Julie.
Thank you, Lindsay. So we just heard about the macro picture, where the energy transition is heading, which is much more build, baby, build than drill, baby, drill. And what we want to do next is really bringing forward the actors of the transition, people who build things, right? Because cost decrease not over time, but actually over capacity deployed, right? Which we need time to do that. But we also need to make sure that the projects get built so the capacity actually gets deployed. So it's my great pleasure to welcome on stage Gilles Vermeau-Desroches, Chief Corporate Citizenship Officer at Schneider Electric, and Andrew Symes, CEO of OxyCU. Gentlemen, please. Thank you very much. You're welcome. Excellent. So, Gilles, we'll kick off that conversation with you. Schneider Electric actually made a bet on sustainability over 20 years ago, right, as a pioneer, long before it was mainstream and London Climate Action Week was that packed. And it was largely out of the spotlight. Now, can you come back a bit on like what drove that decision at that time, but also what it actually looks like to embed decarbonization into the operation of such a global industrial company? And maybe it would be interesting to hear what's the most underreported part of that story now.
Thank you. I don't know if I can answer very quickly to the question, but perhaps some strengths.
Yes.
Schneider is a French company with a very good German name, but it's good when we are speaking about industry. It's good to have a German name. But at the beginning, the job of Schneider Electric is producing steel, and very far from where we are now to put artificial intelligence in the grid and to electrify the world. And it's very interesting because when we see this 190 years, many times we can see a revolution in Schneider Electric to go from one job to another job. And it's true that 25 years ago, in Schneider Electric, we were dedicated to electricity. Okay, it's a common business for many, many companies. And our vision is to embark in innovation on this journey and to try, perhaps the first, to mix electricity and digital. Not only because for digital we need electricity, but how we can use digital to manage electricity and to think differently. Something which was very new 25 years ago is the topic of energy efficiency. I remember very well something. In the first annual report of Schneider Electric, for the speech of the chairman and CEO, I try to put in the text, we will be very focused on energy efficiency. And at this stage, the guy in charge of marketing in Schneider Electric said, no, it's not possible. The baseline of Schneider Electric is energy everywhere, at every time, for everybody. And all our picture was a big city with a lot of energy. We spent a lot of waste of energy. No problem about that. And it's true that we have the chance to have a new CEO 25 years ago, Jean-Pascal Tricoire. He continued to be the chairman of Schneider Electric. It's very important when we are speaking about sustainability to have the sustainability of the leaders. And we have the same leader for 25 years. And just before, he was the country president of Schneider Electric in South Africa. It's not usual to have a CEO who was just 5 months before in South Africa. And when he was in South Africa, he was very concerned by the question of poverty, the question of people, access to energy, which type of energy, how do we reduce pollution, because just before he was in China, and from the beginning to the end of the journey of Jean-Pascal in China, it's from a beautiful time in Beijing with the soul, and at the end, a lot of pollution. And just, the captain is very important in sustainability. And for Jean-Pascal Tricoire, you know Jean-Pascal Tricoire, the topic of sustainability is a unique chance to have Schneider Electric 25 years after. Then we choose to be active in sustainability. That is the first topic. The second topic, I agree with you, we are a B2B company. And when you are a B2B company, it's very different than a B2C company. I have a lot of colleagues who are CSO of a B2C company. Each time, the manner to think the topic, the manner to organize the value, the make proposition of so on, it's very different than when you are a B2B company. When you are a B2B company, the people don't ask you about a lot of controversies. don't ask you to communicate better to be able to produce, don't ask you to generate a lot of passion for the brand, but ask you to have new solutions. And it's why we are here today. And my last point about the strengths of Schneider Electric about this topic, we can consider that it's very simple for Schneider Electric to be at the top level about sustainability. Okay, our job is to electrify the world, decarbonize industry, decarbonize cities, and so on. Okay, the job is done. But it's very different in Schneider Electric. The human pillar of our progress plan is certainly more important than the environmental pillar of the progress plan. If you measure the 20 indicators that we have for 5 years, each 5 years, from 2020 to now, 2000 to now, each time we have more component linked to how do we increase the skills of the people, how do we increase a very good diversity between men or women, especially in the leadership, how do we increase the ethic in our models and so on. And certainly, because we take care in the same manner about innovation, decarbonization, and all the things linked to our business, and how in our value chain we take care to the human contribution of the progress, because sometimes we would like to accelerate. We don't embark people. And if never we embark people, never the innovation will make the job that we put in this innovation to produce decarbonization, for example. It's why to be committed to embark the society, to embark our own employees, to embark the employees of our value chain, it's key to progress.
Thank you, Gilles. A very inspiring story and still a lot ahead. Andrew, first, please, can you tell us in simple terms, right, not everyone is familiar with SAF, what the company does, what's exciting, and what are the industries that will get impacted by your technology?
Yeah. Thank you very much. My name's Andrew Symes. I'm the CEO and co-founder of OxCCU. So we're a spin-out from Oxford University focused on the other side of the equation, which is really, in our minds, how do we access carbon atoms? We still need carbon for aviation fuel, chemicals, plastics, and also for shipping fuel. And the question is, where do we get that from? And we've got to really think about getting it from sustainable sources and not essentially making the problem worse by degrading other things like land. What we have is a technology that radically gets the cost down of the waste-based fuels, chemicals and plastics. And that's really important because ultimately at the moment people are talking about using crops again. We need to stop that and we need to use the actual waste materials that we have available to us, and we need to scale them up rapidly because we still will want to fly. We still want to transport things on ships. We still need chemicals. We still need plastics. You cannot electrify any of those sectors. You must think about how we get those carbon atoms for those sectors and how we convert the genuine waste products efficiently into the products that we need. That's what our technology does. It was a radical rethink of the refinery. It's not completely different to a refinery. It's got inputs and it's got outputs. But the difference is we've got waste in, so CO2, biogas, solid carbon waste, and coming out we've got jet fuel, aviation fuel, as well as chemicals, plastics. And that's really what we need to focus on. And ultimately, innovation is key to getting the cost down.
Thank you, Andrew. Doubling down on that, maybe, Lisa was speaking earlier about how even renewables still need a conducive narrative and education of all players to be deployed fast enough for the decarbonization challenge. In your case, for the molecule side of it, what is the kind of size of the innovation challenge that's ahead, and what are the key bottlenecks to be removed? Can you talk more about that?
The first is to demystify the fact that all the technologies are already there. They're not. We need to start now, and we need to start innovating. We need to prove these processes work at good scale. It's not done. We are not, in 2026, all the technologies are already there. That's not true, especially when we think about something like sustainable aviation fuel. We're at 1 or 2%. Then the next thing is we need to focus on where we scale those and actually get them to the scales that they need to demonstrate the technologies are proven. And then we need to think about geopolitics as well. And it's very, very, very important for molecules because molecules move. It's not like electricity where you have to have your power grid in your country. The molecules can be made anywhere. So Europe needs to have a think, and US and Asia as well, as to what it wants to do. Currently, Europe has great innovation, so we've got to continue doing that. The next question, though, for Europe is, does it want any of its own production, or is it comfortable with China and Asia producing all the molecules it needs, as it does for batteries, as it does for EVs, etc.? And that's a big question that Europe needs to answer.
Yeah, and that's a perfect transition. So one of the example, in Europe that has been built recently, the Casso e-metal plant in Denmark that Schneider Electric is powering. Gilles, can you take us through kind of what does that mean, for such a project to be powered by Schneider Electric beyond the equipment side of things?
That means that we can electrify everything. And such type of plant too. I will explain why after. But just, we are in a time where the consideration is we can electrify, we can go to some other new energy and so on. I think we have to change the mindset. We have to decide that we can electrify all the usage. And sometimes we have some exception, and for this exception, we need to have a new energy, for example, here, methanol and so on. But just in the vision that we have today, we don't have the choice, okay, we have to consider this building, this plant, and so on, which type of source of energy, and so on. No. How can we implement electricity as the energy for the site? If it's not possible, okay, it's not possible, and we have some exception for that. But this plan expresses that it's possible more or less for everything in Europe, and it's certainly a key topic for Europe to be the first continent to electrify everything. It's a key topic because it's something that we know that will be the future. If each of you are here to design a city in 2050, sure, the city will be full electric, only electricity. The question is the transition between now and this time. And in this transition, again, it's very important to win the battle of the smart manner to think of the people. And the battle is to put in the mind of all the people, first, we need to think how we can electrify. And if it's possible, we electrify. If not, we have some exception. It's why for the other energy, we need to decarbonize the other energy, the gas, for example, the methanol and so on. But just in general, we have to have this message for everybody.
Great, thank you. Andrew, you spoke about how we need innovation, and that's a key thing. But getting it to scale is another journey. So you've gone from lab to demonstration plant in just a few years, and one of your plants, OX2, is launching next year. What is really standing today between this phase and the industrial deployment at scale that the sector needs?
So we've got one plant operating since 2024 in Oxford. We've got a second one which will be delivered, hopefully operating in Q1 next year. And we're already planning the one even bigger than that. I guess the challenges, though, in Europe in terms of building and demonstrating deep tech are huge, and it should not be underestimated. Europe can innovate, but Europe does not have a good track record of actually scaling the technologies and showing that the technologies are possible on European soil. And that's really the big question for us is the next plant. Do we do that in the UK or do we do that elsewhere? What we see is essentially that companies that are successful are going to Asia and getting it de-risked there. And that's the honest truth, because the capital cost is much lower, there's more skills, and ultimately, generally, you can get it done faster. Now, Europe needs to really seriously rethink that because it does lose a lot of the know-how associated with scaling that technology when that happens. And then Europe essentially will then take the technologies back because it will probably still want some technologies, but they've been de-risked elsewhere, so you lose a lot of the training, a lot of the skills. What we have in Europe, in the petrochemical sector, is a whole sector where people haven't got experience operating demonstration plants, pilot plants. That's not because they're not talented, it's because they've never been given the opportunity to do it. That's completely different if you go to countries like Malaysia, China, India now. They're coming up very fast in this area. And I do agree with your point. Electrification is so important. But these other sectors are also going to be very valuable, and Europe has got to consider whether or not it is happy to give it all away to another continent.
Yeah, definitely. And Jill, coming back also to your previous point, right? In the industry side, 78% of the industrial energy is still not electrified, right? And you just explained how kind of painting that clear vision of electrification is possible is required, but what else is needed? What are the other bottlenecks or the things that are needed to develop that?
In my view, is to change the mindset of the people. The people continue to consider that electrification, it's a tomorrow reality, it's for a tomorrow technology. But we have the technology now. We have to implement the technology that we have now because we have to innovate for new technology. Sure, we are very far from what's happened 20 years ago when comes the question of electrification. But today, we have everything to electrify. We have all the solutions to electrify everything. And we have to change the mindset of people to say, oh, it's possible. And it's why it's very important to showcase the good practice. The second thing, we have to change the discussion about energy. When it comes to the question of energy, we speak only about the supply. Which type of energy is mixed, in electricity, how do you produce electricity, and so on. The big question for the next year is the demand. How it's better for everybody to use electricity. How to have a big plan for electrification at scale and at speed for Europe is the best plan for investment. First, for energy security. I don't have to explain. Second, for competitiveness. And third, because it's a way of innovation. We will continue to be in the game if we are able to innovate. And the biggest company for electricity are European companies. It's good to have very good competitors. And a lot of competitors are from Europe. It's a very good place to innovate. When I say together, it's not together in the same room. When we are in competition, we innovate together, in fact, because we challenge each other and so on. Then I think today the first topic is to put the fact that we have to educate people to consider that electrification is a unique matter that we have to do. And second thing, continue to be innovative on this field because each time that we will use more and more system of electricity is the same that with your mobile. Never 20 years ago you were considering that your mobile will be close to that with all the usings that we have now. But if nobody was 20 years ago to say, oh, I will wait, certainly in 20 years that will be better. No, we have to buy the mobile the year where we are in order to contribute to the innovation. It's the same thing about electrification.
Thank you, Gilles, and thank you both for painting a vision of what's possible and getting more people to think about it and act on it. Thank you very much. Now let me pass on to Lindsay for our next pairing.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Gilles. So in the spirit of listening to that conversation, the need to really make the choice to build, the final paired conversation that we're going to have is how do we drive demand to give investors and to give companies the confidence to invest, to innovate, and yes, to actually get stuff built. So in that spirit, I'm thrilled to invite Ainoa Under, the head of energy commercial structuring for Google for EMEA, to join me, and Ben Potter, the Chief Strategy Officer of Energy Dome. Welcome, the two of you. Thank you. So I think everybody knows what Google does, but they may not know what Energy Dome does, although you're doing some very cool things, and perhaps your name is going to be much more widely known in the future. Just start us off, Ben, briefly with what you do at Energy Dome.
Sure. So Energy Dome is a long-duration energy storage technology and infrastructure company. We use CO2 to store electricity in a closed-loop thermodynamic process. We've basically built at very large utility scale. Long-duration energy storage is important because energy is abundant in some moments and then it's scarce in others. So we can take abundant renewables, particularly solar, during the day, charge it, and then displace it to the evenings and dispatch it when it's most needed. In terms of the scale and stage of our development journey, we were founded in 2020 in Italy, so we're a European legacy company. We've taken the company from basically a startup in the lab to full-blown commercial scaling in less than 6 years. So we've proven our technology. I think Emily may have a slide which we could bring up to show what it looks like. This is in the middle of Sardinia in Italy. That's what 20 megawatts of power looks like when you can store it for 10 hours. So the technology is de-risked, and we've actually achieved product market fit as well. We've sold various different contracts with revenue contracted in the hundreds of millions of dollars of order of magnitude now. And where we find ourselves today is in full-blown commercial scaling with key partners such as Ainoa at Google.
Wonderful. Very, very exciting to hear about. And we're going to talk about that partnership again in a moment. But I know maybe just to kick us off, we spoke earlier, we've touched on data centers. We know the role that Google plays. You're very big consumers of energy. Talk to us a little bit about your goals as a company and how you're going about that strategy. We also hear stories about progress slowing and so forth. Just give us a sense of where the company's commitment is at and the progress you're making.
Sure. First of all, thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here in London today. I'd like to share a bit of Google's ambition. So in 2020, Google set a big moonshot to get to 24/7 carbon-free energy in every grid where we operate, which means to match our consumption by equivalent carbon-free energy every hour of the year, again, in each of the grids where we are operating, with the ambition to decarbonize these grids. I have to share good news. We have reached 66% on average globally of carbon-free energy in all of our data center footprint. And in Europe, our average is above 80% carbon-free energy. This is 2024 information, which is our latest environmental report published. But we are progressing fast, and we are excited about all the progress that we have set. All of this decarbonization comes from a large portfolio of diverse clean technologies, mainly wind, solar, and short-duration technologies. But we are, of course, moving forward and also supporting advanced technologies, including long-duration storage and other dispatchable technologies that are really key to combine with intermittent generation and to really address the cannibalization risk, exposure to negative prices, and really create a cost-effective, diverse portfolio, and really helping to decarbonize the grids efficiently. So that's the reason why Google is really pushing these technologies, including long-duration storage, but also other dispatchables such as geothermal or advanced nuclear. In terms on what we need from the market, maybe just to address this very quickly. We need the speed, and we've been hearing this earlier today. I was very glad. So we've been doing a great progress to diversify mixes, but we really need to scale this much faster. We really need partnerships, and I think that EnergyDome and Google's partnership is a great example, but we need many more, not only from innovative technologies such as EnergyDome, but also TSOs, governments, utilities, even other off-takers, other corporate buyers. So we need to keep working and collaborating. And finally, we need the right market design. It has been also mentioned before, but I like to reiterate the need of the right policies and really to push forward this transition.
Wonderful. So tell us, Ben, about the partnership with Google and why it's important to you.
Well, as an early-stage company which is now in full-scale scaling, the most important thing is customers, and also customers who have a long-term vision beyond just a single transaction. With our partnership with Google, it's multi-pronged in nature. It includes an investment by Google into EnergyDome, as well as commercial partnerships with various different contracts, but also a vision to scaling into multiple continents and multiple contracts. The key message here is scale, right? So Google is obviously a very large company, very important to all of our daily lives. We're all using YouTube and Google Maps and other products. That needs a large amount of electricity. Our technology can deliver at whatever scale is required. We don't have bottlenecks in our supply chains. We use off-the-shelf components. As you saw from the plant, it is a large facility, but this is bulk, cheap electricity storage at a very high efficiency. So what this is translated into finally is a demand signal where we understand how much demand is coming from a large player like Google, and then Google can understand, on the other hand, where the costs and the price points are and how that can come down with scale over time, which is very similar to what Google and other players did 15 years ago with the original boom in solar and wind, which wasn't as cheap then as it is now today. But it's thanks to off-takes like that 15 years ago, which got us to where we are today.
Right, wonderful. And you have a joint announcement today, big deal, many congratulations. Love to hear from both of you about that announcement and the significance for the company.
Okay, so we made an announcement this morning of our first bilateral contract signed between Google and Energy Dome. It's for a project in Ireland, a 23 megawatt project, which can store electricity for 8 hours and then dispatch it back into the Irish grid. This has the benefits of strengthening the Irish grid, relieving congestion where the renewables are based by soaking them up when they're abundant and then moving them in time to when they're needed. And importantly, it's the first of many contracts which we're working on. We signed another contract recently together with a utility in Arizona called SRP, the largest utility in Phoenix, and there are many other projects to come. I know.
Well, just to build on that, so very excited to make this public, and for us it's really exciting to see this global pipeline of projects. This is, as Ben said, our first commercial transaction, more to come, and this complements this earlier announcement in the US, and this will help us to really enable this technology. So as Ben was mentioning before, we really need to scale up these earlier stage technologies, and we saw the same trend with wind and solar. Google entered into our first PPA in 2010. And then we've been signing wind and solar contracts over the past few years. We have a portfolio of 22 gigawatts globally. Only in Europe is 4.5 gigawatts of contracted capacity. But as I said before, we really need to see other dispatchable technologies, and long duration storage is key. So storage is key for affordable, secure, and clean power everywhere, but in particular, this is key for the European energy transition. So we hope that by enabling these projects and will help to reach commercial stage, will reduce the cost. So the main challenge that we are seeing for these earlier stage technologies are risk and cost. So we look forward to doing the same by repetition, by enabling multiple projects, as Ben mentioned. This is a partnership for developing a diverse and large portfolio of contracts, and looking forward to continuing with the collaboration. And Ireland is a critical market, same as many markets in Europe for Google. So of course we have a data center footprint there, and then this is a very specific location in the Irish electricity grid, very congested area, and we hope that this project will help to reduce the costs associated to this congestion. And this is in the same node as the Dublin area where our data center is located. So looking forward to seeing the benefits for the whole community and the Irish grid.
Give us a quick sense of the timeline of that. When was that location first spotted? How long has it taken?
Sure. So we found the site 3 years ago, and now the project is effectively ready to build. So we've got planning consent, we have a grid connection, we've also got site control. We will break ground next year, and we'll have it up and running in 2028.
Wonderful, wonderful. One of the things I've been doing a lot recently is spending time with clean tech companies in the US. And it's been heartening and exciting because there really is a very strong sense, as we're also hearing on the stage today, that so much innovation is in place, and we are ready to roll out many things that we didn't have 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago. And I've also been struck by, of course, you really need that demand pull in order to feel confident, to invest and be able to raise money. And the role of data centers in that. So one of the things that I heard strongly in Silicon Valley when I was there a few weeks back is how a number of clean tech companies are really advancing quickly and going down the cost curve because of the pull from data centers. And of course, we know that there's a lot of controversy and concern about AI in general and how it gets rolled out and what the rules of the game are and the impact on people, and also about data centers. I'd love to hear from both of you how you think about and how you would encourage us to think about the safeguards, the structures, the way we as societies go forward as we see this confluence between AI and technology and all of that going on with the need to build a sustainable future.
Can I start? So AI is, everywhere. We've been starting the day hearing AI multiple times, and we're going through an extremely transformative period. So in order for us to seize the power, the potential of AI, we really need to address two things. The first one is to transform our grids. So AI is, so basically the data centers, going back to your question, Lindsay, are the backbone of AI deployment and digitalization and this transformation. But then the backbone of the AI deployment are the grids. This is what we are seeing now. There is now a clear bottleneck, and we have to transform our grids to really upgrade our systems so they can really integrate better the demand and generation so we can really unlock this potential of AI. And for that, I think that we need to address planning and address the big problems that we have on access to connection queues and really scaling that much faster. And that's something that I'd like to see in the next few years, and again, alluding to the need of the right policies and regulation for that. We should also use them more efficiently. So I think that grid-enhancing technologies, but also critical and innovative technologies such as energy dome, other long-duration storage are critical for addressing the congestion and the constraints that we have in our grids, and this will help us to use them more efficiently. The other aspect that I think that we should address is scaling clean technologies. Again, going back to how can we get to affordable, secure, and clean power, we really need the collaboration, private and public collaboration, to define the right market design and continue building this partnership, but also seeing the right subsidies in the right markets, really scaling up in the right way then the technology is needed, and continuing seeing other carbon-free energy, renewables, and really addressing this cost efficiency, because this is going to help us with the cost. So this is what I'm looking for. Google is looking forward to continuing collaborating, as I said before, governments, TSOs, but of course other innovators, and addressing these challenges.
Thank you. And you, Ben?
Well, we're here in London, and I couldn't think of a better place to actually frame this discussion, because this is the home of the Industrial Revolution. And I think we have a lot to learn when we look in history from the experience of the Luddites in the UK, which has now become a popular term in the English language. We need to look at what happened there with a major disruption and what's happening now, because it will be a disruption, to look at what the good things were and also how we can mitigate the bad things so people are not left behind. Two manifestations of that, I think, in the modern world are affordability on the one hand. I think to build trust, right, it's not just policies in the Whitehall or the White House. We need to go all the way down to kitchen tables. And where people get very upset is when energy, they actually need to think about energy. People don't want to think about energy. They want to think about their daily lives, right? And for that, we need it to be affordable. For it to be affordable, we need to be able to build, right, as cheap as possible. And to be able to build, it comes to my second point, which is permitting. We need to get the balance right between the NIMBY, not in my backyard phenomenon on the one hand, which the West is a bit of a disease we have in the West. We're not letting things get built. But on the other hand, the cavalier approach of just no permitting, no engagement of communities, which is leading to huge blowback. So it's a balancing act.
Yeah, I'm really struck by the amount of work needed in terms of actually building authentic trust and having society feel that they are truly participating, that people are truly able to participate in the benefits that we unroll. And I'm really struck by how significant that is for those of us now working on climate and on decarbonisation. So we've heard from 6 wonderful speakers, and we have a few minutes now when we can open the conversation up. The other speakers are here with us in the front row. We've got, I believe, 1 or 2 microphones, Neve. And so we would love to welcome hearing any comments from the audience or questions from the audience. So please join in, wave your hand in the air. We're keen to hear from you. And please don't be shy. Here we go, one here. And just introduce yourself as you ask.
Yes, I'm Paul. Paul from Smart Cities World. Thanks for great topics. Every one of you's talked about electrification. I was intrigued that I didn't hear hydrogen being mentioned by anybody. And I wondered whether you'd like to comment on, isn't hydrogen a big key for us all?
So who's going to volunteer for the hydrogen question? I can see everybody looking at, here we go. Mike, have we got the mic? Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, good question. I think hydrogen's having a tough time right now. I think hydrogen needs to be thought of as the input rather than the fuel itself. So hydrogen is a key input for steel, for chemicals, for sustainable aviation fuel potentially as well, marine fuels. So it's an input into those processes rather than an end state in itself. What's interesting, though, is just as Europe's now got a huge turnaround against hydrogen and everyone's gone anti-hydrogen, what's Asia and what's China doing? Just doubling down on it. So if Europe does want to continue with hydrogen, it does need to keep thinking about it and not just completely go back the other way and just go, oh, everything to do with hydrogen is ridiculous, because then you'll end up basically losing another whole industry to China.
Nigel.
Yeah, just to add 2 thoughts. One, because when we're trying to model future technology, we have to make all sorts of assumptions about where costs are going to go. It's something we do a lot at the Climate Change Committee, and hydrogen's a really interesting one. 5 years ago, when we gave the advice for the 6th carbon budget, it looked like hydrogen was going to be the most likely vector for industrial heating. So green hydrogen burnt for industrial heating. What happened in the last 5 years is that the cost down trajectory of green hydrogen didn't go as fast as we thought globally, but actually an alternative solution, electrothermal heating for industrial heating, innovated much faster. So now it looks like that's going to be the locked-in trajectory for industrial heat. I think the comment about hydrogen is really interesting. Like, it looks like some of the use cases, like heating, have fallen away, or like electric vehicles. You know, I mean, even 5 years ago we had hydrogen and EV development plans. But for the molecules, are going to be really important. One area to look at is there's a lot of there's exponential growth in green ammonia plants being built around the world now. China, I think Paraguay have just done one of the Mission Possible partnership have just published a report on that, and a lot of that is driven by energy security, because that can use homegrown hydrogen to make fertilizers, and you know the fertilizer price shock as a result of Iran is horrific. So you see import substitution really driving hydrogen for ammonia, and that looks like that's going to be the vector which brings the price down, which then allows it to feed into sustainable aviation fuel and maybe some others.
Thank you very much. Other questions or comments? Thank you.
Thank you. Amanda Quintana with the World Bank and LSHTM. So just yesterday we had a kickoff to a climate and health event at the Conduit, and we had some mayors from the US, specifically from Phoenix and Miami, talking about data centers and how that's contributed to a lot of the heat risks that a lot of the residents especially have been feeling around them. So I guess it's a question directed at Lisa, but could be opened up to others as well. What are the considerations on health impacts from these energy systems and the investments going into them, especially around data centers? And has that been part of the planning and considerations?
Thank you. Lisa, if you want to stand up and...
If you'd like to chime in too.
Yeah.
I mean, the Business Council for
Do you want to
Sustainable-
stand, Lisa? Yeah,
sure.
thanks.
Thank you for the question. Very much a part of our planning and, top of mind for communities right now. I mean, as you know, communities all over the United States that are, considering having AI data centers come into their communities are thinking about what is the list of concerns and opportunities from that. Health, well-being, and energy affordability are top of mind. And so we're, just this week, just late last week in the United States, the federal government, through our Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, after a 1.5-year process, support from Congress on a bipartisan basis, support from the Trump administration, how do we ensure that customers are protected, and that is economically protected, as well as their health and well-being. So there is a whole initiative of policymaking that's happening from governors to mayors to the federal government to address these multiple issue items. And, again, impacts on prices, which could impact, the comfort and safety and health of people in communities due to the energy sector's connection with electrification, as well as AI data center electrification is key. I know we have Schneider Electric here. They're probably one of the global leaders in servicing data centers on water use, energy, infrastructure, everything. And then obviously we have an expert here, so I'd let them chime in.
Sure. Just building on that, from Google's perspective, the approach is market by market. So we're really addressing these concerns, and again, affordability, security of supply, and clean power, but ultimately is these grids and the communities that are in these areas. With that being said, so water and electricity are top of mind, and we're addressing both aspects by enabling, again, and developing the best technologies to be cost efficient also on the water side, even avoiding the use of water by air cooling solutions, but also really addressing the electricity aspects in these communities. And in the US, the concerns may be different than in Europe, right, or in APAC. So we are, of course, supporting these communities in different ways by, it could be measures, specific measures at community level to address affordability and on the electricity bills for the communities that might be affected. We're bringing our own generation into this system, so this is also part of our contribution, but really addressing the big challenges that these grids have, and really doing that responsibly. So from Google's perspective, that's at the top, at the forefront of our strategy, deciding what is the right location and then how we address these concerns even before starting to deploy any data center. So absolutely. So we look forward to seeing other hyperscalers and other data center developers doing the same, because that's the only way to build AI responsibly.
Thank you. Time for one more question. Anybody else? Thank you. Yeah.
Hello, I'm Frédéric Boissel, working for, actually co-founder of a foundation helping people in the Global South and biodiversity in the Global South. And I was wondering, as a follow-up of the previous question, is how you are going to address the indirect externalities towards these people and the biodiversity up there. Because now, for all the COP, we are trying to have compensation fund that is not working. And how do you feel like Google responsibilities or globally other tech responsibilities towards these externalities for the invisible people, going back to the first talk from UNICEF, not only the children, but biodiversity and all these people below the safety net?
Gilles, you want to take a go? Yes. Here comes the mic. Yeah, thank you. Can we make sure the mic's on? Yeah.
Hello. I think we have to answer to this.
That mic's not working.
It's okay? No? It's a key question for the future. But just before, I would like to say something about climate change, about nature and everything. I don't know if we can solve the problems that we face, but I know something. Without technology, we cannot find the new solutions for the future. We need that, but we need to take care to externality in the same time, to organize a discussion with the community, and in the program where we are involved, we are very often the B2B company, but we are close to our clients to discuss with some of our partners for this topic. But just we need to know why we do the things and how. I know that we don't use all the new technology, certainly in the right manner, to solve the problems. But it's our responsibility to use this technology to find the solution to reduce climate change, to take care to biodiversity. When it comes to the question of artificial intelligence, we can see the risk, but we see a lot of opportunities in order to manage climate. For agriculture, for example, when you discuss with agriculture to take care of the weather, the different things, how do we cultivate today, what is the best solution, then we need to face the risk, but we need to have a clear vision of the opportunity of all the new technology that we put on the table, on the market, to be more innovative for the future. And it's true, in the same time, we have to discuss with the community, but sure, I have some example, but it's more your example that I give you the floor about the discussions that you have with the people.
Yes, so just a chance for one or two final comments from any of our speakers who want to make a final remark. Manu, do you want to?
Well, just wanted to add that there is a huge opportunity to use AI to address, again, some of these problems, and not only the grid, but even when we are thinking on climate change and other geospatial things. So Google is exploring a number of areas, and we'll look forward to helping to resolve from health issues, again, climate change issues, so looking forward to unlocking this potential. Again, we should do it responsibly. And just a final remark from my side, I look forward to seeing great collaboration and partnerships and continuing helping on this transition. So my field, again, is more focused on electricity, decarbonization, and looking forward to enabling these technologies and seeing how we scale up earlier stage technologies such as Energy Dome and others in the next few years. So thanks so much again.
Thank you. And a final remark from you, Ben.
Thank you for the question. It's an important one. Our second project actually in construction is in India. India is a fascinating country. It's a country which has an enormous uplift in poverty, thanks in part to the green revolution in agriculture, but also electricity. Ironically, we need to use more electricity, not less, to solve our problems. I don't think it's up to us to say certain people in the world can't have it. And what we need to do is get the right technologies in place. But in particular, it's pretty hot today. Sweat is important because it cools down the body. But when temperatures get to a certain degree, the human body can no longer sweat and it can no longer cool down. And the area of India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, etc., is particularly a threat. Technologies such as cooling, such as long-duration energy storage, etc., are very, very good at addressing these issues. And it was Lee Kuan Yew in Singapore who basically said the major revolutionary technology which changed the fortune of that country was air conditioning. But we need to use more electricity for that. So we go back into this loop where we need the right technologies.
Wonderful. So I want to conclude with a big thank you to all of our speakers. Thank you so much for the work you do. Thank you very much for being with us today. Big appreciation to you all. And just a final message from myself and Julie. For those of you who are interested, feel free to follow TED Countdown. Feel free to be in touch with us. I've got colleagues here. We've made a ton of great TED Talks, podcasts, and other kinds of stuff, all focused on solutions. And keep in mind that right now we're really focused on this question of how do we build the future that we need and we want, that is equitable and inclusive and exciting for everybody. Julie, just a final word from you on what Ambition Loop is up to.
Thank you, Lindsay. Thank you, all of you, for sharing great examples on the macro perspective, but also on what gets built. Feel free to reach out and check online. We've recently launched our Blueprint initiative, which aims at exactly doing that. And I think I made myself easy to find, so please come in and let me know if you have any questions or ideas for partnership. Thank you very much.
Enjoy the rest of